Good evening from Swansea, wrestling fans. I'm your host, Ben Allison, and you are watching Wrestling Republic's daily broadcast, your one-stop shop for professional wrestling insight news and reviews on a daily basis. And it's Sunday, and it's a fun day, and boy, oh boy, do we have a fun one for you guys today. We are playing a game of wrestling heaven and hell, but of course, with a twist, a WrestleMania twist to be exact. Today, well, in case you haven't watched the Wrestling Heaven or Hell before, let me quickly explain it to you. Each round, the contestants argue a point that they firstly want to send to Wrestling Heaven, then Hell, and then Purgatory. Heaven is something they love, Hell is something they hate, and Purgatory is something they want to be improved. But in today's video, it has to be a WrestleMania-related topic. And of course, there's been 40 WrestleManias. In fact, I tier ranked them in a video earlier today on the channel, right? So there's a lot of different options to choose from. And boy, oh boy, it's going to be a fun one. We have a lot of people in the comments already. We have I Make Beats. Thank you very much. I'm glad you like the graphics. We also have Fernando saying happy 316 day. And David Mards wants to send Cody versus Roman for WrestleMania 40 to Wrestling Heaven. A great shout, no doubt about it. But let's firstly introduce the first contestant on today's show. How are you today, Clark Taylor?
I've never been better. Happy Sunday, everybody. I'm stoked. It's been a fun week in wrestling. I watched a lot of Maple Leaf Pro last night. Way too much Canada for me, but monster shout out Anthony, Kobe, shout all of us that were watching last night. It was hilarious. Big Arch too was there. We had a blast. It's been a fun week all around, and nothing better than to cap it with a little heaven, hell, or purgatory.
Absolutely, and you have a good record at these too.
I actually do seem to be more successful in these than trivia.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. But we will actually be talking.
It's the lawyer, not the stat guy in me that works on these shows.
We will actually be talking about trivia later today on the show because we have a blockbuster announcement, right? Call me Tony Khan because I've got a big announcement later on in the show. But also joining us, we have Ignacio. How are you?
Well, hoping the announcement doesn't fall flat like a fart in church, just like Tony Khan's announcement been. I'm feeling good, man. I was exhausted up until yesterday. I got some good rest. I've been working 16 hours a day, 5 days a week for the past week, and that's going to continue for the next 2 weeks. So I got some good rest yesterday. Woke up today, made some barbecue, had some good old ribs using good old JR's barbecue rub. And I feel good right now, man. I'm excited. It's WrestleMania season. So let's get to it.
Absolutely. And let's just out of the gates jump into Wrestling Heaven. One thing which you guys think was so great from the history of WrestleMania that it deserves to be kept and praised in Wrestling Heaven. Clark, what about you? Let's go to you first.
Out of the gates, I'm going to go with a funky one from my first wrestling show ever, WrestleMania 12. Never forget it. It was unbelievable. At the time, it was the Arrowhead Pond of Anaheim. Now it's the Honda Center, to those familiar with the area, but neither here nor there. Not going with the main event in this one. This may shock you. I'm going with the Hollywood Backlot Brawl. Needs to go directly to Wrestling Heaven because you have Goldust, and Roddy Piper. You have cut scenes from the OJ chase on the 405 freeway, which of course does lead you directly to the Honda Center. All of that combined, and then the match ends in the arena. This was the prelude for cinematic matches that we got during the pandemic. This was the beginning of things that we saw later innovation-wise. We saw this in 96. This started on the Jumbotron. This started on video. It was innovative. It's underrated. Roddy Piper gets the victory, who was as over as could be. It was at a point in his career where he was the best heel probably of all time. But when he showed up there, he was obviously going to be favored over Goldust, and he got to actually stand tall over Goldust and win that match at Mania, which you didn't see often for a guy like Piper. This accomplished so many things, and it was ahead of its time. I'm going with the Hollywood Backlot Brawl, WrestleMania 12.
That is actually a really interesting shout, right? Because at the time, a lot of people despised that, but it is one of the things which over the years, it's grown on people quite a bit. And it kind of, it's kind of got a little bit of a cult following now. Actually,
Yes.
I forgot all about it until you mentioned it. In fact, so a great shout, no doubt about it. Ignacio, what about you? What is your pick to send to wrestling heaven?
Man, I almost want to say something bad on purpose because that one Clark just picked was so good. It was such a great moment. It was interesting. I swear I remember doing this show with you guys last year, and we were talking about that before the show because I remember picking Brett and Austin as my favorite match or moment. We might have done one on favorite match. I don't know matches, but I'm gonna set that one. I'm gonna set that one aside because that's my favorite match of all time. That's my favorite WrestleMania moment of all time with Austin and the blood and all that stuff. But I'm gonna pick Brett and Austin's my favorite match that I've ever watched. That's my favorite match in wrestling history. As far as like from a technical standpoint, the way it was structured and paced and all that stuff. But my favorite match that I ever watched, like that I can watch again and again and again, like in the moment, was Hogan and Rock at WrestleMania 18. Because I remember I was at a friend's house and it was like a house divided. Like half were cheering for Hogan and the other half were cheering for Rock. And I think at the time that kind of, WWE was hitting a stagnant level because of coming off of WrestleMania 17, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But the invasion angle was a flop. It didn't work out. And Vince McMahon and WWEF was looking for something to kind of pick things up and revive the company a little bit because it was hitting a stage of stagnation. And so McMahon brings in the NWO, and he thought the NWO would kind of freshen things up a bit. And I don't think it was leading up to WrestleMania. I don't think it was what they had hoped for until they announced Hogan and Rock. And I think the fans were behind it, but we didn't know what kind of a phenomenon that it was going to be once Hogan and Rock had that face-off at WrestleMania and the way that crowd was going to react. I mean, it was unbelievable. And no matter what you think of Hulk Hogan today, what your opinion is about him, he is the reason that we are here, that we are talking on this podcast, whether you want to admit it or not. That, and that's a conversation we can have for another time on, my thoughts on Hulk Hogan personally. But, that solidified as Hogan is, in that moment, that he's the reason why WWEF was in the stage that it was in, the height of its popularity. He's the reason why, he's one of the big reasons why, McMahon had to step it up and the Attitude Era was born, because he was on the other channel and he made waves over there with the NWO. And then coming into WrestleMania, that face off with The Rock, I mean, that was a huge moment. That solidified Hogan as, he was the major player, and he still had it. And I mean, it was an incredible sight, because you had, Hogan was the previous generation. Rock was one of the guys. I don't think he was the guy. I think Austin was the guy, but Rock was definitely, what would you call it? 1A, 1B. Rock was 1B. Yeah. And I mean, it was just one of the, it's not a 5-star match, but you go and watch it, and that crowd just, electrifies the audience at home. I mean, it made you feel like you were in the arena watching the match, and it was just such an incredible moment. It was, to me, that definitely belongs in wrestling heaven.
These are two tough ones, Ben, because I completely hear him there. And it's funny because, I mean, Rock Hogan is just absolutely iconic. But I will say, Ignacio, one thing you didn't mention, I think one of the biggest things that made that match, and the reason it would belong in heaven, I'm not even trying to argue on your behalf, but would be the Toronto crowd. That's what made that match as much as anything, right? Understanding the educated crowd, understanding the mid-match switch and getting behind it. And like the combination of the two was so unique. Now, back to mine really quickly. I do just want to add one more thing. One of my greatest memories, because Maria, here, if you don't mind me showing the comments, at HBK, the boy had dream winning the Iron Man match at Mania 12 till he goes to heaven. That was my very first WrestleMania show. I've already sent it to heaven. The reason I picked the backlot brawl is I had a great moment with my dad during that match. We weren't sure that they would end up back in the arena when they were showing the chase footage. And I'll never forget, like, when they showed them pull into the parking lot, my dad and I high-fiving, they're here, was such like a cool, it's like one of my earliest memories, right? I was 6 years old. So it's like, I think that's maybe just nostalgic to me, but wrestling heaven deserve it.
It was definitely ahead of its time.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that one. But you guys are being very, very nice about each other's points here for a second. So actually, I'm going to stir the pot a little bit. Ignacio, argue to me why Hogan versus Rock deserves to be in wrestling heaven more than the backlot brawl.
You know, man, I just think it's solidified Hogan as you know, how should I say this? Like Hogan transcends time. You know, his whatever you think about him personally, like I said, in the wrestling business, he has transcended time. And if it wasn't for outside antics or what maybe things he said or done, he would still be a huge figure today. And you know, I don't want to bleed into. I want to have that conversation at another time. But I just think, you know, he's the reason that we're watching it today, and that moment at that time, you know, solidified that, you know, that Hulk Hogan is WrestleMania and was WrestleMania at that time. That WrestleMania was still a big deal. Yeah.
No doubt about it, but I'm going to ask you the exact same question, Clark, but vice versa.
So I would say the Hollywood backlot brawl deserves to be in over the WrestleMania 18 match between Hogan and Rock, because there's plenty of Hogan moments and there's plenty of Rock moments that we've already sent to heaven. And we've like, it's a really great example, but we've sent plenty of moments from those two, some WrestleMania 3 stuff that I'm sure deserve it. It's not the most deserving of those two, but it is the highlight of Dustin Rhodes' career. It is the highlight of his WrestleMania career for Gold Dust. It's the most memorable moment, and it is the only moment in Roddy Piper's career where he stood tall as a babyface in the middle of the ring at a WrestleMania, and Roddy Piper is a deserving Hall of Famer in every single way. He's arguably the greatest heel of all time. If you get a Piper comparison on the microphone and you're a heel, that's the ultimate compliment. It's not somebody else. And this guy was that good. This was his singular babyface victory moment. And it was innovative. It inspired multiple matches at multiple WrestleManias, including arguably the most important modern WrestleMania, the one without fans. I don't know if we have those two matches at the most difficult to book WrestleMania ever in WrestleMania 36. There's no debate about that one without the Hollywood backlot brawl at WrestleMania 12. And that's why it deserves to go to Wrestling Heaven. I don't believe that's the first cinematic match. I'm telling you, the entire beginning of that match is cinematic. That's what it is. They're using the O.J. Simpson chase footage. This is the first one ever, and it's 1996. This is, 24 years before. 24 years before WrestleMania 36. It's the realistic. I mean, there's other cinematic matches. It's the first WWF one. WWE. You've also got Dusty Rhodes, who has a hand in this as well. Now I'm hurting my own argument, but while we're on the history subject, obviously he had the one on the back of the truck in the NWA, the famous one where they're on the freeway and like the bales of hay. I forget what it was called. Ignacio, you would know, maybe. What was that one called? What was it?
It was like the big rig match or something like that.
Yeah, it was like the big rig. Yeah, like they were on a truck. They fought on a truck. It wasn't very good, but that would be the first ever. Match. But the first as far as in the WWF, WWE, that would be the one. But
sorry,
Adrian,
what did you say the first ever one was?
It's the Dusty one, I think. It's the Dusty big rig one. They're fighting on on a big train.
Okay, I'm going to summarize, right? You both made really good arguments here. Fernando says that Hogan is a terrible human, but a huge part of wrestling history, whether we like it or we don't. Very, very true. That is absolutely correct, in my opinion.
Respond to that real quick. I didn't say Hogan was a I didn't say Hogan was
I
a
know.
terrible human.
No,
No.
Yeah.
Can,
No,
To
no,
be clear,
Ignacio, you're good.
absolutely
Yeah,
not.
no, you did not. You weren't pumping up his character in any way.
yeah.
But right, I always use a different lever every single time. This time I'm using one of my lights. I've never used it before, so it's always behind me, right? But this is actually a perfect lever, the perfect shape for it, right? But I have looked at the options, right? And I've actually done a little bit of research while you were talking, Clark. And while the backlot brawl was undoubtedly iconic and undoubtedly does have a cult following, it was not the first ever cinematic match, and nor was the one that you
No,
mentioned.
I meant in WWE.
But that match, the backlot brawl, actually took inspiration from a match which happened in Japan 9 years earlier
That's what I
with
said, that's not the
Inoki.
WWE.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. So
It's not the
it would have
WWE.
happened. The pandemic matches would have happened the
I
exact
said it was
same.
the first in the WWE. That's all I said.
Yeah, but you said it inspired the pandemic ones and all this. It wouldn't
It
have happened
did.
without it. One already happened before it. You can't make that argument.
Oh.
But at the end of the day, The Rock Hogan, that face-off in that ring, that screenshot, you still see it on memes to this day. It is iconic. So Ignacio, I am sending that to Wrestling Heaven. Round 1 goes to Ignacio.
What an upset, right? I mean,
That's a winner. I mean, dude, it's fair. It's a good one.
They're both good,
It's a good one. No, it's
great
fair.
options. I had to do some research to try and choose.
It's such a hard topic, but it's good.
Yeah.
It is.
Right, next round, Wrestling Hell. What do you guys hate from WrestleMania history, which doesn't even deserve another chance? It should be banished to Wrestling Hell and never seen again. Ignacio, you open it up this time. What are you sending to Wrestling Hell?
Well, I'm going to go a year before WrestleMania 17 and, the conclusion of the main event. It was the culmination of the two hottest figures in wrestling during that area of that time. Excuse me. Stone Cold Steve Austin and Rock in the same ring. It was at that time, it was our generation's Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior, because they were both baby faces, but at the end, in an attempt to, I guess, freshen up Steve Austin, because Austin felt that his character had stagnated and needed a revival of some sorts. He, as the story goes, that he went to Vince McMahon and JR and said that, I want to turn heel. And I just think that, it didn't need it. It didn't make any sense. It set the trajectory for WWE's, I don't want to say downward spiral, but I mean, they stagnated after that, because that led to Austin turning heel and hugging McMahon was the thing that nobody wanted to see. Nobody wanted to see their hero hug the evil devil boss or whatever. It didn't make any sense. People didn't like it. That led to the invasion angle, which instead of pivoting and having Austin lead the charge for the WWE F at the time, they put him as the leader of the WCW and ECW front. And because they wanted to keep him heel, because they wanted to put all their chips in making Austin a heel, and it just didn't work. Nobody liked it. And, for that, that sent WWE into stagnation. Like I said, they weren't as hot as they were. They could have done so many things with keeping Austin a babyface, because they could have had fresh matchups like with Booker T and DDP, and eventually Goldberg, and then these guys that were coming in that had some value with them. They could have fresh matchups with Austin leading up until WrestleMania 18. Maybe things would have been different. We would have seen Austin and Hogan or Austin and Goldberg or something, but I just think that didn't do WWF any favors. That was kind of like the pitfall for WWE going forward into the coming years. It took them a while to recover from that. And I think that's what it started off with, turning Austin heel, which was a big mistake. So I'd send that directly to hell. And I think Austin would agree.
Yeah, that's going to be a hard one to beat, honestly. That is one of the worst moments in the history of, I think, the entire company. To be truthful, Shawn Ellis is sending WWE as a whole to wrestling heaven. Meanwhile, he's sending AEW to hell and the NWA as well.
That would be
One
an
day
interesting
Shawn
game.
will like it.
Someday.
And that day will be a great day. He'll turn face on AEW. Bobby Petito sending Jerry Lawler versus Michael Cole from WrestleMania. I think it was 26 or 27.
My winner.
To Wrestling Hell. I mean, honestly, I think that's on the thumbnail for this video. That sucked. But Clark, how are you going to try and beat Ignacio?
I've got a better one here. I'm going with the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, and it pains me. I hate to do this to my guy Andre. I'm a huge Andre fan, but his name and statue should not be on this absolute mess we've always had. It never done anything for freaking anybody ever. Not for 1 minute. Not only that, it's like, hey, so we did the Royal Rumble and y'all loved it. Watch us do it without the cool part, the entrances. Now check this out. To start Mania, stop it. And then some guy wins, he holds up a big trophy, and that's the end of it. Matt Hardy won this thing. And then he had to get broken. Baron Corbin won this thing. It's so cursed, you can't make it up. Madcap Moss won this thing. Bobby Lashley's in AEW won it. Braun Strowman won it. I mean, there's one winner ever, and it's Jey Uso that won it. And it didn't even really make sense at 37 when Jey won. It didn't. He had to recover from that and be the right-hand man or whatever, or not even main event Jey. He had to be a Roman hanger-on to work his way back up after he was supposed to have his big battle royal win. And then we finally gave him a Rumble, but it's Mojo Rawley's a past champion. Cesaro in AEW. This thing did nothing for nobody, and it's such a joke. It just makes me sad because I love Andre the Giant. But get his name off this thing. It's not right.
I mean, it does suck, right? I mean, I just looked up the winners myself. Cesaro, Big Show, Baron Corbin, Mojo, Matt Hardy, Braun, Jey Uso, Madcap Moss, Bobby Lashley, and Bronson Reed.
Yeah,
nothing for any of these guys.
It's like a curse.
At the beginning, I laughed at the beginning. Clark, when you started talking about it, I laughed so hard. I had to mute myself. I laughed so hard because the look on your face.
It's just horrible. It's a mess.
It is.
It's never been good.
Right. I mean, Ignacio, I'll give you an opportunity to try and argue against Clark's point, although it's going to be a tough one.
Well, I mean, it's just like with turning Austin heel. I think it was kind of like that's what sparked the trajectory of WWE stagnation. Is that after Austin turned heel and they tried to Triple H got hurt, right? Because they were going to do a deal they did a deal where they were with McMahon and they were the 2-man power trip, and they're eventually I think that was going to lead to them main eventing WrestleMania the following year, but he got hurt. So okay, let's put Austin in charge of WCW. And it just didn't make any sense. And I think if they would have kept Austin's career would have been revived again as a babyface if they could have had him lead the charge for WWE in that poor invasion angle, or at least given him some fresh matchups, like I mentioned, against Booker T and DDP and the guys that had some value coming in. I think that it took them a while to recover from that. It took them a couple years to recover from that. To me, it impacted the company as a whole.
Fair enough. A very good point. What about you, Clark? Why does the Battle Royales deserve to be in hell more than that awful Stone Cold heel turn?
Yeah, so I understand that the Stone Cold heel turn was awful and everything, and it hurt things, but there is one primary difference between these two topics, and that is we can remember the Stone Cold heel turn, and I can't tell you a single spot. We had to Google the winners of the Andre the Giant Memorial. We had to look them up. It doesn't get any worse than that. We had to find out what happened. At least we remember, as bad as the Stone Cold one was, at least we remember it. We were like, wait a minute, who won those? Did they even do them? Yes, they did. Woof. It doesn't get any worse.
At WrestleMania 35, can any of you guys name the runner-up of the Andre the Giant Battle Royale? Just list some names. Guess.
Not a chance.
James
James
one?
Ellsworth?
35?
35, the runner-up.
35. That was okay.
I couldn't. No chance.
No, I can't.
I have no idea.
Colin Jost. But
No,
I
stop
think
it.
that summarizes this
Who's
thing.
the final elimination?
Colin
Wow.
Jost. Right.
Heck of
Okay.
a comedy writer.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a tough
Yeah.
one. It really is. Fernando is right. The Austin heel turn did kill a lot of business. I mean, both of these deserve to be in Wrestling Hell, but only one can go in. I've got my lever. Almost dropped it just then. But here's the thing, right, guys? At the end of the day, the Austin heel turn probably did have more a negative impact. But it was one mistake. How on earth have they made the same mistake 11 years in a row? Thinking about it now, it is crazy. The Andre the Giant Battle Royale is going to Wrestling Hell. I mean, honestly, that is just not one winner's benefited. It's nuts.
It's like nothing. It didn't help anybody.
Did Cesaro won the first one, right?
Yeah.
At
I believe
WrestleMania
so.
30?
Yeah.
Man, I thought that was going to be his springboard to like
Same.
superstardom.
You got it.
They put him with Heyman the next night on Raw, and it was like,
I thought he had it. He had it finally.
Oh, gosh. How
And then he
was on
didn't.
Mania the next year. Oh, no, he was on the next year. He wasn't on the year after. Oh, gosh. But before we do get into purgatory, it is time for my big announcement. Because today's big announcement, and it isn't sponsored by Tony Khan or anybody. In fact, it is just very straight up a Wrestling Republic announcement. And that is that we are doing a quiz tournament, a trivia tournament, the king and queen of the quiz tournament. And we have 8 people here at Wrestling Republic facing off against each other. It's going to be taking place over the next, well, technically the next 9 Sundays, but it's going to be the next 4. Then there'll be a little bit of a break for WrestleMania. Then we'll be returning to it in late April. But the opening round in the quiz is going to be these matches. Firstly, the first match next week, Clark versus Soul. Second week, David versus Chaos. Third week, Megan versus Drizzy. And fourth week, Kobe versus Archie. It is going to be a fun one. It is going to be a general knowledge wrestling quiz. Tons of topics. It is going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be in the exact same style that we did the quiz last week, but we do have proper fact checkers for every question. There's going to be no mistakes this time. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It should be really, really fun. Something I've wanted to do for a while here at Wrestling Republic, and we are finally doing it starting next week with Clark versus Soul. It is going to be a fun one. How are you feeling about your chances, Clark?
That's going to be a tough day for Soul. I would pack a lunch. I mean, I'm going to waltz past him like something you've never seen. Like you don't even know what's coming here. I've been hitting the books. I've been hitting the DVDs. I've been all over the Google machine. Trust me, dude. I've got all the facts. I'm ready to rock. I'm ready to roll. As long as the questions are clean, should be just an easy victory for me out of the gates. I'm sure that semifinal matchup's going to be tough, but sounds like it's probably
winner of David and Chaos.
Sounds like it's probably going to be David. I'd love for Chaos to pull a bit of an upset there, but if it's going to be David, I mean, you don't want me, Dave. You don't want me, buddy.
I'll give you guys a little bit of a look behind the curtain, right? I was having a conversation with David the other day because you guys know he does quiz leagues and stuff. He's great at quizzes.
Dude, but he's quizzical.
Yeah, right? He's easily the favorite in this tournament. But here is the thing. He did the quiz like on his own, watching along with Kobe and Soul, the AEW one last week. And David said he didn't win it. He got several of them stumped him, right?
If Ali beat Foreman, I'm telling you, David, I'm coming for you in those semifinals.
Chaos.
If Ali can beat Foreman, I can get David. I know it.
Do you guys? I'll let you know my favorite to win the tournament, right? My pick, and it's a little bit of an out there shout, but I do think that his knowledge is so general. I think he actually might do this, Drizzy, because he's got such a
Driz,
general
I
knowledge
think,
too.
is legitimately as dangerous as anybody. Driz
Yeah.
for this is as dangerous as anybody in the event. I've been scouting my opponents. Kobe's scary too, just because he's such a nerd. But like
Yeah.
the I mean, that kid knows stuff that he shouldn't even know. Like it makes no sense. Like he's either reading or talking. That's the only things that Kobe does.
Oh gosh, right, let me quickly try and here we are. Sorry, right, so I've got the quiz topics for round 1, guys. I'll quickly read them out. So here are the topics for round 1. Oh, never mind, you guys will actually have to wait until next week to find that out, because no, we do have them. We have them. Right,
got 'em.
Pre-97 WWE, the Attitude Era, Ruthless Aggression, 2010 to 2020 WWE, the
Woof.
Triple H Era, AEW, WCW, ECW, Japanese Wrestling, NXT, Lucha Libre, and finisher names, plus 3 bonus rounds every single time. So you'll get asked 1 question for each of those.
I've got 3
Man, that
New Japan
Lucha-
DVDs and I've watched them all, so I'm hoping you ask a question from those ones.
That lucha is going to kill everybody. I mean, do
I
we have
know.
anybody in WR that's a lucha finiciado?
I'm pseudo
I mean,
lucha knowledgeable. It depends on where he goes. I'm pseudo lucha
Yeah, I mean,
only just because I've gone to a few shows before it was like
Yeah.
not cool to go down anymore.
I mean, after the '90s,
living in
like that kind of
SoCal.
spot stopped.
Yeah, it depends on where the questions are asked. I mean, if you're addressing like lucha history, I've got a better shot than I do
Okay, that's
the
what it will
current
be.
state of lucha. So it's like
I'm very, like, I'm not going to say obvious, right? But
Yeah.
for all the rounds other than the Triple H era, right? Which obviously, 'cause it's right now, we are going to have to make them a little bit harder. For all the rounds, the actual questions are pretty obvious. Like, nothing's that out there. But even still, people are going to trip up. And that's why it's going to be so fun for people to, really, at home take part in and everything. But it's going to be a tough quiz, honestly. And of course, the double point chips and all of this, it's going to be very interesting and very exciting indeed. But before we get to next week, we need to get to Wrestling Purgatory. One thing from WrestleMania history which you thought was bad, but could have been better and should be improved. Clark, kick us off. What are you sending?
Oh, you know what I'm sending. Cody finishing his little story in Philadelphia at 41. Yeah. Ooh. My best Scott Hall impression there for a second. But yeah, I mean, listen, he needed 7 of his best buddies, mostly Hall of Famers, to show up and help him. And then he beats Roman Reigns, the biggest star in the business. And since then, we've basically complained until Big Brother and John Cena, Big Brother Rock and John Cena had to step up and make it intriguing again during Mania season. I've seen a lot of like goofy rivalries since and everything. It was a real cool moment. It was really nice. It was really great for a second. And then it was like, okay. It took a year to save it. It took a year to save it. I mean, that's where we're at this stage. It took a year and John Cena turning heel to save this thing. Right? Like, I mean, yep, he won, but this is purgatory, no doubt. Because he's got to prove something next month at WrestleMania because this belongs in purgatory, Ben.
I mean, I don't agree with a lot of what you said there. In fact, I think this Cody reign has had its hiccups. You are right. There have been some boring moments.
He's
but there
had
have
the
also been
hiccups.
feuds like the AJ Styles feud, the Kevin Owens feud. There has been a lot of great moments during this reign.
You're digging too deep there. I mean, they're okay. They're okay. I mean, Kevin Owens, actually, I thought his best feud of the year had nothing to do with Cody Rhodes. So, I mean, it's like, since it happened, I like nothing to do with him, right? That was his second best. And if that's one of the examples, I mean, don't get me wrong, AJ Styles hasn't done a lick outside of help out Logan Paul at the Garden, but like, I mean, those are the examples. Come on, knock it off. Like they were okay. They're big stars. I enjoyed it while it lasted, but like realistically, I never thought that AJ Styles was the threat to take the title. And I thought,
Okay,
dang,
that's
Kevin
true.
Owens might have gotten enough steam to potentially win it, and they went a different direction, which is fine. It's all fine. But
You are right, to be fair, that none of his opponents have seemed like they'll actually take the title off him. That is a good.
This is why it's purgatory to me. That's the thing is, me, because my history here, like, making fun of Cody Rhodes, because I enjoy doing that. I think it's funny. Like, you might assume that I'm saying like, oh, it was all bad, 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 bad. No, like, I understand that finishing the story. This is why it's purgatory and not hell, right? This is why it would be purgatory and not hell. If he can capitalize upon it, then like purgatory means you can still elevate, right? That's the way I view purgatory, and that's where I think sort of the Cody finishing the story's at right now, is he can still elevate it further. He's got John Cena in his crosshairs here at WrestleMania, so it's very possible that this can be sort of solved. But at the end of the day, it belongs in purgatory for now, because we just haven't seen anything since, and it didn't produce anything other than just a very like happy howdy doody moment. Everybody claps.
But that is what it's about. But anyway, I'll let Ignacio say his. Fernando says a lot of people have said that the fans were eventually going to turn on Cody, but he still has over. I think it's meant to say over as ever.
He's poor
I mean,
too.
that
Though.
is
I like
true.
that. I like
That
the
is
way
true.
that I like. Leave the typo. He's still poor too.
Ignacio, what about you?
He's not.
What do you want to send to Wrestling Purgatory?
Yeah, it's real quick. I mean, I I think Cody's had a pretty good run. He's had some good matches with Kevin and AJ Styles, and he had that match with Gunther that was really good. So I think his best stuff is kind of yet to come. I think he's going to do real good things with Cena. I think he's still got Randy Orton down the pike, so we haven't seen the best of what Cody has to offer in his feuds yet. But I'm going to go back to WrestleMania 18 again, and I'm going to go with Austin's match with Scott Hall, which is very forgettable. It wasn't very good at all. I think it was only like 6 or 7 minutes long, and I think coming into the company, I think Scott Hall wasn't in the right frame of mind, and he had some personal issues he was still battling at that time. But I think from a character standpoint, if you remember, Hogan the next night after WrestleMania went back to the red and yellow, and I remember that night on Monday Night Raw, and the crowd went banana, as Pat Patterson would say. I think the issue was with the NWO coming into WWE at that time to try to kind of revive it and freshen it up, was that because it was part of WCW, and the invasion angle was so poorly executed. And Vince McMahon tried to bring in the NWO thinking that they would freshen things up. But I mean, the NWO was still a WCW creation. At that point, WWE fans, they didn't want anything to do with WCW. They didn't like Hulk Hogan, Scott Hall, and Kevin Nash as they were in WCW, even if they were with the NWO, and it was cool at the time. They didn't want to see that. I think that you bring in Razor Ramon, and you have the Razor Ramon character, and build up to that match with Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania. Now we got a hit on our hands. And I think that kind of would have fired up Scott Hall a little bit. I think if you would have done the Razor Ramon character with even a little bit more of an edge to it, and I think that's your big matchup at WrestleMania. And I think things would have went a lot differently. I think the crowd would have been fired up to see Razor Ramon enter that arena with his cool walk and the way he looked and the jewelry and the hair and the gear and all that. I think it was just the Razor Ramon. If it was the Razor Ramon character against Stone Cold Steve Austin, I think that would have fired up both characters, both people, because he was just Scott Hall with Razor Ramon it was just so cool at the time, so different, ahead of its time. It definitely a Attitude Era character. If he could have stayed, they could have put more of an edge on it, and that would have been cool to see. But yeah, I think that belongs in purgatory. I think if they would have changed that up a little bit, they would have had the Razor Ramon character against Stone Cold Steve Austin. We'd be talking about like probably one of the more thrilling, entertaining matches. One of the more thrilling and entertaining build-ups up to a match for WrestleMania.
Some very good points indeed. And in fact, I'm going to summarize, right? You can call me Lord Sugar because I'm going to summarize. Right, got the lever out here, guys. And you guys both made great arguments, right? And Clark, I do understand what you're saying. And quite frankly, you did make some great points there. Cody's title reign has been a year long, and there's not really been a moment in it where we have really said, you know, this guy could take the title from Cody. We haven't been saying that. And from the high that we had at WrestleMania 40, it's kind of felt like we've been on a little bit of a lull ever since. And Tink22_54 says that you nailed it with your point. And I think you did, right? And to Ignacio's point, I mean, Scott Hall, Razor Ramon versus Stone Cold, that should be a huge deal. That is a blockbuster. I mean, that is a WrestleMania main event.
Arguably the greatest sell in Stunner history, though, however. That highlight is replayed iconically for years.
That is true. That is true, right? But here is the thing. Purgatory, something which could be improved. Could Cody's title reign be improved? 1000%. Could the moment at WrestleMania 40, which is what we're talking about here today, be improved? Absolutely not. It was out of the charts. It was off the charts. It was fantastic. But Scott Hall, Stone Cold, that goes to Wrestling Purgatory. Ignacio wins today's show.
A deserved win. A deserved
what
win.
An upset.
A heck of a game.
It
was deserved. Honestly, yeah. Wow. That was a deserved victory.
Congratulations to really Ignacio.
As fun as could be.
This was a really good show.
It was very fun indeed. Right, tomorrow's show, guys, will be 2 hours earlier once again because of Raw being earlier, and it is earlier in the US tomorrow as well, right? So in the States, you can watch it the same time as the rest of the world. So Wrestling Republic's daily broadcast will be 6 p.m. UK time. That is 2 p.m. Eastern in America, and that is 12 p.m. 11 a.m. Pacific. There's too many time zones. We might just need to make everybody on one universal time. Maybe we need to do that. But 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, and 6 p.m. UK time will be Wrestling Republic's daily broadcast right before Monday afternoon Raw. It is going to be a fun one. Thank you to Clark, and thank you to our winner today, Ignacio, for joining me here, and thank you to everybody for commenting throughout. We will see you guys in the next one tomorrow. Same place, different time. See you guys then. Ba 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 ba.